Rishi Sunak says he's going to pour millions into a carbon capture project in the North Sea, hoping, of course, to outflank Labour on oil and gas, but creating, hopefully, 21,000 new jobs.
Yeah, the Prime Minister will meet energy bosses this week to lay out plans for energy security in Britain. This comes as net zero and ULEZ face increasing scrutiny.
Yes, it's becoming very, very political now, I guess.
Definitely.
We're joined by energy expert Malcom Grimston this morning. And a very good morning to you, Malcolm. What do you think? Is this workable, this plan that we're going to hear more of later, I think, from Rishi Sunak?
Well, we certainly need a plan. We need three things from our energy. It has to be secure. It has to come when we need it. It has to be economic. It has to be as cheap as possible. And it has to be environmentally as least damaging as possible. And of course, those three things are often in contention with each other. And trends change as the world changes. In the 1970s, we were desperately worried about secure supplies. By the 1990s, there was loads and loads of natural gas around. Oil prices were low, so we focused more on getting the price of energy down. That led to a period when there wasn't investment in energy, and we're now back at the period where we haven't really got enough kit of various description to keep the secure energy as reliable as we'd like it to be. So some sort of long-term thinking about energy, I think, has been needed for the last 20 years. And it's very encouraging that that's happening now. What they actually come up with, of course, is a different matter.
Yeah, you're dead right, Malcolm, because there's no detail at all laid out about what the portfolio will be. And, of course, the big debate is what's going to be the reliance on net zero tariffs and on renewables. Grant Shapps talking tough again today, saying Starmer's stance on North Sea oil threatens the lights going out. We've already kind of had that. Renewables, we know, aren't keeping the lights on when the wind drops in winter and when there's no solar power. Do you think that the Tories will actually have the guts to say we're going to commit to a fossil fuel future? Or are they going to once again run into net zero targets and basically leave us at the mercy of importing expensive fuels or being at the mercy of unreliable renewables?
We have a fossil fuel future, there's no doubt about that. For example, when the wind isn't blowing, you just mentioned, or it's at night so we're not getting solar, then it's natural gas that takes over to make sure that we still have the power coming into our homes to pump water around, to run all of the essential services, and of course to our hospitals, to our traffic lights, things that are vital to our safety. So it's a matter of how rapidly and how sensibly we can move towards new source of energy. It is very encouraging that the government is taking a much more active line about new nuclear, for example, which I think is a very important part of the solution. But whatever future you look at, you're going to see that we're going to need quite a lot of gas in particular for the foreseeable future. And then the question arises, as you say, to what extent do we make that gas from our own reserves, particularly in the North Sea, but maybe even onshore where fracking is possible? And to what extent do we continue to be growingly important on imports of gas when we know that an awful lot of the world's gas is to be found in that sort of elliptical area that includes the former Soviet Union and the Middle East, which are areas which there are questions over the political stability, clearly.
Well, clearly, we're going to hear a bit more about it tomorrow because the Prime Minister will be in Aberdeenshire and that's when he's going to sort of announce what it's all about. At the moment, we've just got the vague phrase that it's going to be a carbon capture project. What does that mean?
Well, one of the technologies which has actually been around since the 1970s but is attracting a lot of attention now is that you try and trap the carbon dioxide after you've produced it and then take it somewhere and sequester it, it's called, capture it and then sequester it underground, probably, in a way that it won't then get back out into the atmosphere. Now, I say we've been doing it for a long time for a variety of reasons, but it's not yet been done on the sort of scale that we'd need to be talking about. But what might happen, for example, is that you could run a coal station on more or less pure oxygen coming in instead of air. That would mean that what was coming out was fairly pure carbon dioxide. You just capture all of it and then send it through pipelines either to be buried underground or to be converted into chemicals called carbonate. rates, which are quite stable. And I think it's, my view for a long time has been that given the amount of coal that China and India in particular are using, we had the statistics a couple of days ago that confirmed that last year we used more coal than any year in history. So coal is doing very well right the way through this climate crisis. If we're going to see China and India continuing to use coal, and I've no doubt that we are, then capturing the carbon dioxide becomes an essential technology alongside the technologies that don't produce carbon dioxide in the first place, like nuclear and renewables.
Malcolm, as Bill Clinton so succinctly put it, it's about the economy, stupid. Front of the Sunday Express today, winter bills set to soar again because of soaring energy costs. At the end of the day, Malcolm, this comes down to what people are prepared to pay. Is this now a situation of ideology clashing into reality? People care about the environment, but they also care about not being broke. They care about not being cold, about not being hungry. And surely we have to face reality now, and we have to have a mixed portfolio that isn't solely tied to the kind of Greta Thunberg mentality. We have to be realistic.
Yes, and it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about having these three requirements out of energy, and they're all important. Actually, evidence suggests that the most important is security. Any government which tries to live through large-scale power cuts is going to get it in the neck when the next election comes. Then economy, and then maybe environment as the correlation. But on the other hand, I'm absolutely convinced that climate change is real and serious, and that what we've been seeing about sea temperatures in particular over the last couple of weeks are beyond frightening. But it has to be done in such a way that people don't feel that it's become an us and them, like Stop Oil, the Stop Oil movement, Just Stop Oil, which really seems to be trying to set this up as a group of people against normal people. I think that's such a mistake. We need to recognise. But the other thing is, I've said, we've not been investing enough in energy for some time in an attempt to keep the costs down, and that means we have to spend a lot of money now on kit. So we're stuck, I think, with higher energy prices than we've been used to for a while. But there needs to be more sensitivity in recognising that the position of the first decade of this century, when it was all environment and there was very little attention going to economics and security, that we have to get back to valuing all three of these elements and coming up with policies that are always going to be compromises, but which deliver to a sufficient extent on all three of them.
And the politicians, interestingly, have got to figure out where they stand on the issue and then have to sell it in a way that obviously they will want us to vote for them. And they've got to do that within about a year.
Yes, I don't envy the decision makers at all within this, because I think most people in Parliament accept that climate change is real and we've got to do something very serious about it, which is why the net zero policies were adopted. But equivalently, the definition of sustainability is that we look after our own needs today without compromising the needs of people in the future. Now, that's a heck of a tall order when you're looking at a world which is still addicted to fossil fuels. Not only coal but also oil had their best year ever last year, despite it being 35 years since we all got together in Rio and said we've got to stop this. So it's not an easy decision at all. But I do hope that politicians won't entirely abandon the environmental element of all of this, because it is extremely important. And while I believe that maybe it was got out of kilter during the early 2000s and became the only thing that people were looking at, it remains enormously important that we do what we can to put some sort of lid on temperature rises for future generations.
Yes, got to think of the future generations. Malcolm, as ever, it's good to talk to you and have you explain it all to us. Thanks very much indeed.